G'day listeners and welcome back to the Keeper League podcast for a very special bonus episode. This week I have the creator of Keeper Fantasy, the new platform that's out, Ryan Power, to give us a bit of an update on how it's all going, some of the new features and all that sort of stuff. So Ryan, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thanks, Jeff. Good to be back. It's been a few months, but a lot has happened in those few months.
Well, yeah, we started, what did we do? We did a podcast back in, when was it, about November-ish or something like that. And we kind of introduced Keeper, but so much has changed in the platform since then. So be a good time to get you on. But for those who haven't heard of Keeper Fantasy before, maybe just give us a bit of an overall introduction to it and a bit of a progress update for those who have been using it so far.
Yeah, so I think it was around that time, so late September, I announced at the end of the footy season that I've been working on a new draft platform that really is tailored towards those more serious leagues, those keeper leagues who probably didn't have all the tools that they needed anymore in the other platforms that were out there. So, yeah, as someone who is a keeper league player themselves and has been into draft for years, obviously with Ultimate Footy is my background. I thought, you know what, like there's been a lot of advancements in technology and what's possible. So let's try and see what we can do with a new platform. And so I've been working on this for probably 9 or 10 months now. And as you said, we sort of launched in an off-season mode initially, where you kind of, if you were playing somewhere else, or if you're playing in a spreadsheet, you could start to set up your draft league, import your history, your teams, all those sorts of good stuff. And now just recently, as of the end of last year, we moved into what we call preseason mode. So that's one of the differences with Keeper is it does really simulate the real AFL season, where you do have these different phases. You know, you're in the off season, you go to preseason, you do your draft, and then you're into the in-season mode. So I'm excited to sort of get that preseason mode alive, and that allows you to start getting access to all of the cool new settings for your season ahead, and also start to even play around with some preseason lineups.
Preseason mode in Keeper Fantasy is a lot less daunting than preseason mode in real life, I've found from my football career. It might seem like a big difference on the platform, but it's a lot different to real life. But anyway, let's have a talk about some of the actual different things. So we had off-season mode and then preseason mode. So what's the actual difference? What can you do now since we've last caught up and talked about it?
Yeah, so it is a lot about the new features, or the in-season features. So you can set your on-field settings, you know, how many backs, forwards, mids you want. You can go through all your different lockout settings. There's a bunch of things that I sort of added that I wanted as a commissioner myself. You know, like last year and in previous seasons, it's been a bit of a nightmare with Thursday night games and Friday night games in the AFL schedule. And every week, you know, you'd be jumping on to try and update the settings and let everyone know. Well, one of the great things you can do now is you can actually go through round by round and just configure it however you want. And that includes, you know, for example, the bye rounds. Lots of different ways you can handle those. For example, the early ones, you might want to take those round zero scores and apply them. So we'll manage all that for you, because it didn't make sense that every league was going to have to do that manually. It was a very popular setting. A lot of the in-season settings are there. And you can start to really understand what Keeper's all about.
I actually went through and had to play around with that feature the other day. I only just discovered it. But what we've done in our league is we're doing, for every team that's on a bye, we can play one less player. So, for example, if there's 2 teams on the bye, we play with 2 less players on field. And it was actually just so handy to go through. Before the season even starts, I've gone through and set what the lineups are for each round and stuff like that. But it's not only because I've got the best Keeper setting on, which we'll probably talk about more settings specifically later. You can actually change like formation, like positions and stuff like that. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, it's it was pretty ambitious to add this one, but basically, if you wanted to play, like you said, if you wanted to drop one midfielder, one defender, one forward for one of the bye rounds, you can do that. It's not just about best X scoring, which is one of the things you can do. So that's more like, you normally have 22 on field. Let's only take the top 18 scorers. That's fine. You can do that. But you can actually modify your lineup. I mean, if you wanted to, you could even add a position. If you wanted to add some extra utility positions, for example, over the bye rounds, because you want more flexibility, but you don't want to necessarily drop those positions entirely, you can do that. So, yeah, customization per round is just a big one that I don't think I've really seen done anywhere in fantasy before, but thought I'd give it a crack, and it's come out great.
No, it's an awesome feature. Like, if you're in a really deep league, like we talked about one on the podcast on the weekend, which I've since found out a lot of my Gold members Discord chat are actually in. The one that's got 18 teams in it and squads of 34 or something like that. They're rolling really deep lists. Like, if you get to a point where you're struggling to get players on field, you could legit set your lineup to be 16 utilities if you really wanted to. Is that correct? And you could just have any player, as long as they're a warm body, they're on the field, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, there's lots of different ways you can go about it, and having spoken to lots of different leagues in the build up, even before I was starting development and definitely throughout, and even now, like one of the best things about launching in sort of an early access mode, I got a bunch of leagues on to sort of test, and all the feedback has been amazing, and it also what it does is people see the platform and they're pretty impressed. Like the feedback has been really positive. A lot of the emails I get nowadays, they start with, "Oh, we're loving the platform. Plus, can we do this?" And I think what's happened is their expectations of what is possible has risen as a result of getting access to this and seeing how it all looks and feels. And so now there's even like more little out there ideas that are coming through, and they're going to benefit everyone once they get around to being able to implement them all.
That's what I love about this platform. And like, this is a story that I think I've told in an article before, but like, the fact that like you're in control of this, like it's just so easy for you, and not easy, that's probably overstated, but it's more possible for you to just jump on and make a change and do something, as opposed to other platforms that I've used before that are very rigid, takes so long for the updates and that sort of stuff. Like, I think I was probably one of the first users on the platform, and I was telling you how kind of annoying it was to actually import the teams at the time. And then I suggested maybe we could add a bulk import feature or whatever. Literally the next day, you had put it on the site and made life just so much easier for users. And that's what I love about the platform so far, is just like every time there's an issue or something, like you think of a way to fix it and it's implemented so quickly. We don't have to wait for the next year for something to be added or something like that. It's been awesome so far. So hats off to you, mate. We might just move on to the next question though. So we've talked about a few of the different features, but what I want to know, what features are you most excited about as the kind of creator of this? And what are you kind of, for someone that hasn't used the platform before, what are the features that you think are going to win people over?
Well, I mean, you make a good point before, even with the importing of teams. That's something that I noticed myself. And being a user of Draft and have a keeper league for 20 years now, like I get to build what I want as well. So some of the most exciting things that we're looking forward to is definitely the free agent acquisition budget. So it essentially turns your waivers into an auction where everyone gets a budget at the start of the year. The default is $200. Fake dollars. And then sort of each week, the weekend starts and all the players go on to waivers if you've enabled that setting. And let's say there's a breakout performer in round one who scores 100 points. Instead of just whoever's luck of the draw has that number one waiver, everyone gets a chance to bid on that player. So, someone might put in $30 bid, someone might put in a $20 bid, someone might go all out and use a whole $200. Who knows? But if you want to, you can do that. That just means for the rest of the season, you kind of will be at the end of the pile. But, free agent acquisition budget or FAAB as it's abbreviated is a really cool one that I think everyone's going to love. And it's also good to add a bit of banter to your league, who's put a crazy bid on for someone. And I'm sure as people are figuring it out, there'll be some silly bids that are out there, but that all adds to the fun of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. What other features you are excited to announce and show to people?
Yeah, well, I think, as I said, like the flexibility around the buy rounds is great. We'll be applying some of that. But another one that I think is one of the bigger game changers is actually the injury list. There's also rookie and veteran list, but particularly the injury list, it's actually enabled by default because I really do think once people start to use an injury list, they're not going to ever want to go back, So what that means is when a player gets injured, we'll update the status in the system, and there's multiple different gradings of injury. There's like short-term injury, which is kind of 3 weeks or less. Long-term injury, which 3 or more weeks. There's obviously if you're out for the season, that'll be marked. If you're retired, even that'll be marked. But what it allows you to do is if you've got a player who does have an injury designation, you can move them onto a bonus list spot, and that frees up a space on your team to go out and add a new free agent. And you can have multiple injury lists, and as I said, you can control how they're used. Even during the buy rounds, if a player is like on a buy, you could even, if you want, you can enable that setting in your injury list to allow them to be moved there. So that's even another way you can deal with the buy rounds. So it's very popular in the US, and it really does just mean that if you cop a few injuries, and everyone has them, you don't have to have your list, have your whole bench just full of injured players. You can actually replace them with some depth.
I'm not sure what type of leagues you play in, but in my league, injuries are pretty much like celebrated when someone else gets them in our leagues, and there's no chance that they'll let me pick up a player to replace an injured player. But I like the thought for those leagues that are a bit more kinder to one another. But anyway, looking at the rest of the questions here, so we've got these features that have been launched, but I've been playing around a little bit, and there's a few bits and pieces that aren't quite there yet. So, like, what are some of the bits and pieces and features that are still to come?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a huge roadmap, and just getting chunks out as they needed. Now the big one is obviously draft. So draft's coming up in a few weeks. Feb 10th is the first date at the moment on the site where you can draft. Just wanted to be a little bit conservative there, just in case not everything got done in time, but hopefully we'll be able to open a little bit earlier, maybe for leagues who are doing offline drafts or like a single computer draft. But draft is a big focus. A lot of the functionality is there. You can jump in, you can trade draft picks already, you can update your draft order, you can see your board, nominate keepers, all that good stuff. So a lot of the functionality is there. It's more about just polishing off that draft room. And then once you get access to the draft room, you'll also be able to have that player queue, which is essentially like a pre-draft rankings where you can move players around. And a lot of people want that now. It's sort of helpful to do it after if you're in a keeper league or a dynasty league, after those cuts have been made, so then you're actually ranking players who will be in the draft. So looking forward to that, and it's really exciting. Again, I've built these draft applications years and years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. And some of the technology that's out these days just makes it super easy. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then there's also the whole stats side of things. There's some good information in there at the moment. There's a whole lot more stats that are behind that, and got some great ideas on how to break those stats down. Even in the community, there's some really good websites now that do a lot in the way of visualization, yourself included, mate, like some of your pre-draft ranks. So I've had to send a few people your way because they're not quite there yet, but there's going to be a lot more stats, a lot more filters, a lot more way to analyze your team, even like, average age breakdown of your squad, average age breakdown by position. There's so much cool stuff, but it's just having to wait a little bit until we get into the season, or at least through draft, and then that'll all be added as well.
Yeah, thanks for the little plug there. I was going to say, if you need someone to do your ranks, the AFL Fantasy ranking spreadsheet came out. You can do your ranks there. Supercoach will be out next week, so there you go.
Yeah. There's actually one more thing I want to exclusively announce on the podcast. We're doing season outlooks for every single player. So all 777, 78 players. I've been working with a couple of writers who reached out to me in the preseason and really excited about Keeper and want to get involved. But tomorrow we'll be launching these, and basically, every single player, a short little blurb about where they should go in the draft, what should you expect, those sorts of things. The main reason is because when you're in a draft, you often have another tab open and you're trying to research players, and you get down to pick 300s and you're starting to get really thin, right? And you don't maybe have as good intel on those guys. So what I really wanted to do is give you like a quick 5-second look at what a fringe player might do for you this season, so that you don't have to scramble in case someone's just sniped your three top queued up players. And so I reckon everyone's going to love these, and hopefully it opens the door to more content as well in the platform that just helps you as you go.
Just making it easier for my Nuffy league mates. It's not what I like to hear, but Anyway, not as many draft steals coming my way. But anyway, anything else that you want to talk about that's to come?
They're the main ones. As I said, it'll continue to evolve. The list of things to come is actually longer probably than the list of things that have been done. So this is really ground floor. I think it's a really good start. It's a really good foundation for where it goes. But you should see the list of all the suggestions that have come through for it from everyone.
Well, that's really excited. I think listeners will be pretty keen to hear that and know that there is a heap more to come. On this week's podcast, we talked about DT Shiva, and Damon alluded to something like a bit of a community platform or something that's going on there. I want to hear more about that. What's happening there?
Yeah, been speaking with Damon for a while now, and was really excited that he made the decision to come across the Keeper. I mean, that's a massive endorsement from the biggest promotion relegation competition in Australia. So super excited by that, and definitely part of that is probably because I've got a few things planned for the community. One of them is kind of like a central hub. So if you're in a DT Shiva league, you'll get access to that. You'll also be able to see kind of a unified view of all of the leagues, all the different divisions and records amongst those. So if you want to check out what's happening in Div 1 and you're in Div 20 or whatever, you can do that. even the way that the platform's set up, like you don't have to actually be a member of a league to view it, unlike some other platforms maybe where it's a little bit harder to view. So yeah, having that sort of central hub, access to all the key links that you need for Shiva, like the podcast, and hopefully, if all goes well during the season, there is the Shiva Cup, which is a cross-divisional competition, like a knockout comp. I'm hoping to add something around that. It would be the first time I've ever kind of built something that is cross-league play, but that will open the door to many more things as well. So yeah, I'm super excited about what we can do for the guys who are playing DT Shiva.
I'm visioning behind that like some sort of Champions League that could be like done with like a rival league or something that everyone could kind of take advantage with or something like that, which would be pretty cool for the Dynasty format. Anyway, so now that's pretty awesome. So anyway, next thing, I guess what I'm wondering personally is how are you finding it? Like I'm someone who does like a little bit of coding. I'm very amateur compared to you, but the whole process of doing something like this seems daunting. And if I look at other platforms, there's usually like big teams working behind it. How are you doing this all by yourself?
Yeah, I actually love it. It's really like it doesn't feel like a job. It feels kind of like you're working on a craft. I don't know. Some people might like fixing up old cars or woodworking or, going out and doing something. That's what it feels like when I go up into my office and just sort of get in there. It's nice having that creative freedom almost to just, get in there and do and build something that you want to see in the world. And so I've really enjoyed it. It definitely is stressful at times and there's a lot to do. And I've probably actually, when I step back and look at it, I'm like, well, this is to have apps and to have a website. It's actually a lot. And it's kind of amazing how far you can go as a solo developer if you kind of know your stuff. And, all of this is made possible just due to being in the industry for so long and seeing different ways of approaching things and then choosing, strategically the tech stack and, chat GPTs and things like that are really helpful too. So, it's been sort of an amazing journey. And then last month, I had the arrival of my firstborn son, which has added another sort of wrinkle into the mix. But yeah, he's been great. And to be honest, it means I've just stayed home and just been coding between feeds and things like that.
I can just imagine you with a baby under one arm and just tapping away on the keyboard with the other one, getting the.
There might have been some baby. Yeah, it might have been some baby wearing in the carrier while the keyboard's getting tapped away at. So yeah.
Now the keyboard puts it to sleep. It's worked out perfectly for you. I know what you mean though. Like when I was building footy numbers, you get into like a state of flow where you're excited to actually get stuck into it each day and stuff like that. And it's not actually like a chore. And yeah, it's a great way to be, and it kind of ensures that like the product that you are building is going to be quality as well, because there's a lot of love and care going into it as well. Speaking of sorry, I was just going to say.
That was one of the things I was going to touch on next. Was just like the feedback loop from the community is also something that's always driven me. Like I do all the customer support. Like if you message any of the platforms, you're going to get me, right? And that's one of the advantages of being solo. And one of the advantages of why you might want to choose Keeper is that you do, you do get access to me and answers, and you don't have to sort of wait a little while, like you said earlier. But like having that, when I add something and I get immediate feedback and it really just makes me want to do more and more. And that's one of the great things from the community has been the reception. Like I've probably never worked on something where I get so many emails that start with like, oh, we're loving the platform, plus can we maybe do this, or can you help me with this? So I think we're onto a winner here, and hopefully that continues.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think from what I've heard as well and the things I hear, I'm actually getting a few emails I think that are meant for Keeper coming to the Keeper League, people not knowing the difference, but I just forward them on or just tell them that I'm working on it. So when the change does happen, I get the credit for it. But anyway,
go for it, mate.
We might call it there. But is there anything else that you want to plug before we end the podcast today?
Yeah. So one of the things that I want to try and encourage is actually spreading the love of draft to the next generation. So there are different subscription tiers to help compensate for all the time I put into this, but it is free for students. So if you're in secondary school, there's been a few people who've already contacted about this. Want to give you full access to the platform all season long, because that's where I started my draft journey, and when many people do, it's one of the best things to do is when you're at school with some mates. Get started in a draft league, do your draft, and then you've got banter throughout the year, and you can play in computer class when you're not supposed to be. But that's one of the great things. So if you are a student or you're interested in playing, like, get in touch and we'll make sure you get that upgrade all season long. And then just in general, like, if you've heard about Keeper a little bit and you're not really sure, you're not really sure what it's all about, like, just jump on the site and check it out. Like, within a minute, basically, you can have your league created. You don't need any of your league mates to join before you can sort of access all the settings. We generate all the teams for you. Tell us how many, basically just tell us how many teams are in your league. Generate all the teams. You can start adding players to those teams. And then when you're ready, invite those coaches to take over the team. So, really just jump in and give it a go and let me know what you think. If you've got some questions, I'm more than happy to help out.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Ryan. Where can people find us? What's the web address for Keeper? Give us everything.
Yeah, keeperfantasy.com. You can follow us on any of the socials. Keeper AFL is the Twitter X handle. We're probably most active and getting the most updates if you want to follow the journey. And also myself personally, power_32 on Twitter X is where I give a few more little insights to the behind the scenes of the development work if you want to follow along. But you can pretty much find us anywhere.
Well, thanks once again for joining us today. Really encourage every listener out there to go and check out the Keeper platform. Whether you're thinking about using it or not, give it a go, sign in. It's super easy. I cannot believe how easy it is just to get in there, set up teams. You don't have to worry about, sending the invites to your league mates and waiting for them to join before you can do everything. It's just fully ready to go as soon as you get in there. So highly encourage it. Anyways, mate, thanks for joining us and we'll talk to you soon.
Cheers, mate.